It's not a perfect composition, but if you're struggling for gear, this is about as close as it gets. Welcome. I'm the DeadwoodJedi, and this is another Raid Shadow Legends video, and the count we're in right now might look a little familiar. It's because we were in it not too long ago. This is the account of This Is Us Family. You might have remembered a birthday, self-given birthday gift of an account takeover. This is that account. We're visiting it back. Before, if you recall, we did a slow tune. We brought an apothecary. We were making a Sepulcher Sentinel and Venus go extra fast so that we were getting more turns in, more damage, and we had everybody else on the team really slow. I believe we had Whirlim and Skull Crusher going at like 150 or something speed. And as a result of that, we were actually able to do a really good job on Nightmare. I think we were at 2 key range. We went from about 9 million to about 27 or so. And at this point, we're very firmly in that 2 key range now, doing about, I think, 30 million on Nightmare. But This Is Us approached me and said, can we take this to an Ultra Nightmare team? I feel like, I've kind of maxed out the Nightmare damage. Is it possible? And I was like, well, you know what? Let's take a look. We'll try it. We jumped in the account, and I almost immediately gave it back to him. Because the problem we had with the first account was we didn't have any gear with speed on it. And I was killing myself trying to find enough lifesteal gear so we could stay alive and with enough speed so that we could actually be effective at that level. And now we wanted to go to Ultra Nightmare. The requirements are even bigger. We need more accuracy, more speed. And then I had an idea, because he'd been leveling up some champions and bumping them up and making them a lot stronger, getting more guys up to 60, so we had more options. So I took a look at the champions he had, and I realized most of the ones that he had available, he had a bunch of new ones up at 60, we would be able to get to a 170 speed. Now the hard part is Sepulcher Sentinel. Key to any composition, really, being able to block the stun, block affinity debuffs, and I knew even if we could get this account to Ultra Nightmare, we were still going to have to deal with some Nightmare stuff. So we need to be able to block those debuffs. Sepulcher Sentinel, that's hard to do. You got to get her up to 229, 230, 240 speed to really make that effective. But because of this one champion we're able to bring in, we were able to not only tune this for Ultra Nightmare, but make it something that is tuned for Nightmare as well. Get Sepulcher Sentinel to a 2-1 ratio or a 4-3 ratio, and enable it so that Sepulcher Sentinel is blocking the debuffs and the stuns for both Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare. It's not a perfect composition, but if you're struggling for gear, this is about as close as it gets. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. And if you guys haven't figured it out, I'm going to show you the champions here. The champion I'm talking about, the one that makes all of this possible, is Vergis. Yeah, Vergis. Like, nobody uses Vergis. For good reason. Very hard to tune. Let me look at the skills really quickly so you have an idea. Reflect damage on the A1. Who cares? This A2 is really everything Vergis is about. Continuous heal, increased speed buff, reflect damage buff on one target ally for 3 turns. And then he places ally protection on everybody and increased defense on himself. That increased speed buff, this is really what it's about. Because he's going to place it on one champion. Now, the way the AI works, it's a lot like Sepulcher Sentinel's passive ability. Vergis is going to place this skill on auto on the lead champion if Vergis isn't lead, or on the second champion if Vergis is lead. So it makes it predictable, which means we can actually tune that team. And the great thing about it is, with Sepulcher Sentinel in here, having to go fast, we can actually place his ability on Sepulcher Sentinel. Now, Vergis is a lot like Nazana. They do one thing extremely well, not a lot else. Really, we're relying on Vergis to keep our team alive and get our team to speed and tune it. Because they're going to be our ally protection champion, we do need them tanky. So 4,400 defense is excellent. 35,000 health is good. We could definitely get that higher. But for where this account is at, that's really great. We got Vergis at 177 speed. I am for this composition because it is unique, because it doesn't work in the calculator. You're not going to be able to replicate this in the calculator. I am going to put all these speeds. One, I'm going to list the speed, this particular tune on the website with ranges to it. And then I'm also going to put the ranges of this particular speed in the comment section down below. So we're going to bring in Sepulcher Sentinel, obviously. Now, I told you, Sepulcher Sentinel is going to go to 4:3 ratio. We have Sepulcher Sentinel going at 205 speed. This is usually 240 is what you need your champion at. We have 3,200 defense, 31,000 health. The health is okay. She doesn't have great base, so that's okay. And the defense is too low. We do have a little bit of crit rate, which is nice. But the gear, I haven't even talked about the gear yet, where our restrictions are. I just want to point this out. We have a 4-star gear on the hands here, right? There's a lot of room for improvement on this in this gear, so just keep that in mind. We do have Skull Crusher, so we have Counterattacker. We also have Ally Protection there. Combined with Vergis is going to give us a double Ally Protection. That's going to make us very tanky, let us last a long time in this fight. Skull Crusher's all right. We've got basically the reverse of Vergis. 44,000 health, 3,600 defense. This could obviously be a lot higher. We do have Skull Crusher working at 191. Now, Venus, I didn't really have to do much with the speed. I actually slowed her down from what we had previously to fit this composition. She's going to be moving at 175 speed. We got plenty of health on her. Okay defense, again, but that's in line with what Sepulcher Sentinel's doing, so that should be fine for our team. Got good accuracy on her. Could actually probably lose a little at this point, but again, the gear is going to be very limiting. And then the very last champion is kind of a do what you want. We have poison and decreased defense and weaken from Venus. So ideally we'd bring in a debuff extender extraordinaire, a Septimus, a Vizier. We don't have those. So what I decided to bring in, although you could bring in, if you wanted to do this composition, you can bring in your own damage dealer. Another option is Bulwark. Bulwark's a rare champion, one of my favorites in the game. Excellent champion, does a couple really cool buffs. Debuffs, I should say, both HP burn and weaken, even if it's a little smaller size. Those can have a major impact on your team. And most importantly, does an extension of debuffs. So every time he gets hit, there's a chance to extend the debuffs. Really good. I think it's going to be excellent for this kit, this team. Again, lower stats than we'd like. 3,300 defense is lower than we want. 32,000 health is actually really good for Bulwark because he has a very low base. 182 speed. Bulwark does have to go fast. And you can see the accuracy there. The accuracy is way too low as well. We really want that closer to 250, at least 230 is typically where you want your accuracy for Ultra Nightmare. So those are the champions. Now let me express what I meant when I say we are low on gear. We're going to be looking at lifesteal stuff primarily. This is the defensive gear, defensive percent that we have in lifesteal. Equipped. This is everything. 4 pieces. 4 pieces have defense on them as a primary percentage. That's it. Almost half of this is just the weapon. We have 3 shields with speed on them. See all these gloves? We're not using any of them because HP, crit damage, crit rate, but it's pretty low, and HP. This is 4 stars. This is 4 stars, and we're using it. I want to just show you real quick here. Let's do this. We don't have any speed glyphs. We've used all of them. I think all 3 or 4 of them. That was it. We don't have any accuracy glyphs either. You can see, like, we have one 1-star accuracy glyph. If we had more glyphs, this would be a lot easier to tune because we could bump up some lower rank pieces. We can stack some more defense and HP on. We can add more accuracy in so we wouldn't feel like we're light. But Bulwark's light on accuracy. Sepulcher Sentinel is light on accuracy. The saving grace of this composition, though, is Vergis, because Vergis is going to allow us to go exceedingly fast for what we should be doing. I haven't done this in a little bit, but this works both on Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare. It has a little bit of variance to it. There's both the RNG of Sepulcher Sentinel hitting that decreased attack. If that falls off, that's really bad for us. Also, the RNG of Bulwark and the debuff extensions has a major factor. But considering the gear lack that we have, this is really good. You saw the defense. We're sitting around 3,200, which for me is really light. But because we have the double ally protection, we're going to be okay. Now, real interesting thing about this composition, it is really, really cool. This is one of the most, I think I'm most proud of this composition out of any composition I've done. because it works perfectly. And let's go in and I will show you exactly what I'm talking about here, guys. So as we go into it, Sepulcher Sentinel obviously is going to go first. So we do need a 1-turn delay there on that ability. And then we have Skull Crusher here. And we're going to go ahead and use that counterattack ability. Now, when you face Affinity, you're going to need to make some adjustments with the skills. You can make this completely Affinity friendly, but you're going to have to manual about 3 cycles. Without doing that, it's just this first cycle is what needs to be manual. But the stun can have an impact on things, and if it hits Skull Crusher especially, it's really going to throw things off. So you're going to want to keep that in mind as far as like the timing of everything goes. Now, this is the second turn around. At this point, we don't need, and there's no delay. Vergis, the first time they're going to place this ability. Now, here's the trick. I screwed this up many times. You have to click on the champion you want them to use it on. For us, it's going to be Sepulcher Sentinel. So we're going to click on Sepulcher Sentinel. You see the speed buff, the reflect damage buff, the heals. That's what we want. Now, for me, I always like placing decreased defense and weaken right after the stun. So we're going to wait on that. Sepulcher Sentinel is going to go ahead and use the increased defense and block debuff ability. And everybody's going to kind of go at that point. Now, here you're going to see some of these debuffs are about to fall off. We're not protected all the way through on the first 2 stuns. We are going to have to soak some of that. So we just need to be aware of that. Now, because we're only facing Void, at this point we can pretty much click auto as long as the stun goes to the place we want it to. If it goes to the wrong spot, that's a different story, but as long as it stays where we want it, we're in good shape here. My fear is that it's going to hit Skull Crusher, which it does, which means that's going to throw off Skull Crusher's counterattack ability. And so we're going to have to adjust that through the second cycle here. But otherwise, we could click auto and be good to go. But we're just going to have to manual just a little bit longer to get through it. The stun came right before the AoEs. We're going to place the decreased defense, the weaken. Skull Crusher's going to go. There is that delay, like I said. And there we go. Just kind of go through and use our abilities. Vergis is going to place that ally protection. Again, we have to click Sepulcher Sentinel. If you don't, it's going to throw it all off. There we go. Now, Skull Crusher, we need to wait now. Because we screwed up the timing of things, we're going to need to wait a little bit. So we're going to go through. Now, another thing to note. Oh, yeah. So that's basically it. It is affinity friendly. Go ahead and use that ability right here, right off the bat. Right? No problem. Good to go. And then we just have to manual through Skull Crusher so that they place the counterattack at the right time. So if you wanted to do this against, I think the better way to do this probably would be to just manual Skull Crusher's first cycle through and not use his counterattack ability, and then you can use it on the second cycle and click auto. But I screwed it up, so it's not going to be the way it is. But you can see all the debuffs are blocked. You notice the stun went onto Bulwark, who's the second champion. The reason for that is the other part. We have reflect damage on Sepulcher Sentinel. That will screw things up. The clan boss does not like to hit reflect damage. So if a champion has it, nobody else does, if affinity always trumps everything, right? But if that's the case, they'll go ahead and use it. The clan boss will avoid that. So that's why we brought Bulwark in and not as our lead, because what's going to happen is, we can click auto right there. The stun's not going to go to Sepulcher Sentinel, it's going to go to Bulwark, who's our second champion in the order. And that's what we want, to extend those debuffs. Now against Affinity, it's a different story. Clan boss is going to target the Affinity champion. So against Green Affinity, which targets red, that's going to mean Skull Crusher. Against Blue Affinity, which targets green, that's going to mean Vergis. In both cases, that's okay. And then against Red Affinity, it's either going to be Sepulcher Sentinel, I guess it won't be Sepulcher Sentinel, it'll be either Skull Crusher or Bulwark in that case, or Venus. Any of those are fine. It's not going to screw us up. So this is the composition. Now you can see we're not doing a lot of damage, but what's going to happen is Vergis on auto will place that increase the ally protection, the increased speed on Sepulcher Sentinel. Sepulcher Sentinel is going to take a double turn between the AoEs, including that second turn, which is going to block all the debuffs and put increased defense on us to make us a little tankier. And because Bulwark is at the speed that they're at, they're actually going first, which means that ally protection from Vergis is going to cover Bulwark for the stun. That's the real crazy part about this. So Bulwark is going to have ally protection when they take the stun, because the clan boss doesn't care if you have ally protection on. Doesn't care. Which means that Bulwark, even with only 30,000 health, 30 or 3,000 defense, is going to be fine through the stun too, because they're only taking half damage. That's the real power of this composition. Now, there is one interesting thing about Vergis. Vergis will, on the A1, place reflect damage on a random ally. That can alter where the stun goes. If that reflect damage goes on a Bulwark, that's going to push the stun onto somebody else. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. As a possible reason why maybe the stun goes to the wrong person at some point. That's definitely going to be a major factor. But other than that, this composition, it's not flashy, it's not fast, but they're going to last a really, really long time and do a very solid amount of damage. Not great, not with this gear, but I feel like this is definitely a 3-key Ultra Nightmare team. As the gear gets better, as we can increase the defense, increase the crit rate, there's going to be a lot more room for improvement on this composition. So I'm really happy with this. I think it's very good. I know fam is really happy with this. Let me get myself off the screen. You guys can watch this pretty crazy run where we're using Vergis to speed tune our team. Nuts. Well, there you go, guys. The damage is pretty low. It's definitely not where we want it to be for Ultra Nightmare. It's south of 4 keys. It's about a 5-key team it's looking like right now, maybe even a 6-key one. RNG has a major factor, though. You saw Skull Crusher didn't heal up, and as a result of that, went down way too early. This team should be lasting into the 30s as far as turns go. I've seen this team do over 20 million damage before. This team can do some real damage for you. So definitely not the strongest team right now, but you guys saw the gear we had working. We don't have crit rate, we don't have accuracy for everybody. And when you drop decreased attack and you don't heal up on your between the turns, it's going to be real hard to have great success with this. That said, let me show you guys what this can do on Nightmare, because it is way more effective on Nightmare, and that's kind of the beauty of this composition, is it's great for transitioning from Nightmare to Ultra Nightmare. And the Nightmare run's way more successful. We don't have to worry so much about RNG because our accuracy is all well and good. But what we are going to do is we're basically going to just increase those delays by 1 turn. So we're going to do a 2-turn delay on Sepulcher, 1-turn delay on Vergis, and everything else should fall right in sync. It's actually pretty impressive little composition here. So we are going to do the counterattack here. I'm going to manual the first 2 cycles just so we get ourselves perfectly in sync, and you're going to see why in just a little bit that you need to do that. So like I said, 1-turn delay there with Vergis. You can go ahead and put the decreased defense and weaken up right away. And now right from the get-go, Sepulcher Sentinel is going to take their double turn here, which is great. So that's going to allow us to block the debuffs right from the beginning, which is really nice, especially when you're facing affinity bosses on Nightmare, which is pretty common. So the A1 on Sepulcher Sentinel, that was the delay. Now we're going to put this, remember to hit it on Sepulcher Sentinel. Now we're going to use Vergis' ability, get that speed up. Go ahead and lay some more poisons there, maybe not. And then very last, Sepulcher Sentinel goes, place the increased defense and block debuffs. And that's going to keep us completely debuff friendly here for the counter attack, for the stun attack, I should say. So we don't take any debuffs doing this. And that's great because there's a lot of people that are, you know, against Ultra Nightmare. They're facing Void, but Nightmare they're facing Affinity. And so this works really well with that. There we go, get that second counterattack going on. So right now, in the beginning here, you can see Skullcrusher's actually going first. That's the thing when a champion goes 1-9-1 generally against Nightmare. They go first, and then at some point they take a double turn, so they switch to going last. And that's exactly what's happening here. Right now, Skullcrusher is going first, but on this next turn between the AoEs here, and this is why we are continuing to manual, right here between the AoEs, Skullcrusher is going to take a double turn. And because of that, we want to manual it. Now, Skullcrusher is going to take a stun as a result of that. Most likely, the Affinity can alter those equations, but that's why we do need a manual through the second turn here. So you saw Skullcrusher went first. There goes Sepulcher Sentinel. Everybody else is going to go. And you saw Bulwark went before Vergis. That means this ally protection that he's putting on, again, on Sepulcher Sentinel. You saw I almost put it on Skullcrusher there. This ally protection is going to carry through to the stun. And that's really important for us. And there we go. Get that block debuff and increased defense. And then you see Skullcrusher's second turn. So because Skullcrusher's taking a second turn there, all those debuffs will fall off before the stun. But from this point forward, Skullcrusher will go last, and it's just a stun, and you only have to go through this one turn here, and we're going to be just fine. Because you're going to see Skullcrusher will have the counterattack as an option. We don't want to use it now. We could, but we don't want to. We're going to wait. Takes his turn there. Let him take the stun. Because it's Skullcrusher, he's going to cleanse that off himself. It won't cleanse the turn debuff, but what it will do is it will allow him to take his turn. And because he already had counterattack available, he'll be able to use it right here. So, there we go. We get that decreased defense and weaken out. Perfect. Skullcrusher's going to use the counterattack on the last. There we go. And we are all set. We are on auto. You can watch. Vergis is going to place that ally protection on everybody and put the speed buff on Sepulcher Sentinel right here. Boom. There it is. And we're in tune. There goes Skullcrusher. And guess who goes last? Sepulcher Sentinel. Block debuffs. We are affinity friendly, stun friendly. No problem. Double ally protection going through all three attacks, which is unusual because Bulwark's going so fast in this composition. This works great, guys. It works really, really good. It works best with Sepulcher Sentinel, to be sure. You can use that ability with Vergis to make any champion that you want as your lead to go faster, but Sepulcher Sentinel is ideal because she has a great speed aura, and because she can block debuffs, and because the timing of this will put her in a perfect position to do both those things. So this is the ideal composition here. Now, you don't need Venus. You can bring in a Rosin and a Frozen Banshee instead of Venus and Bulwark. That's a great way to go with it. Highly encourage that, in fact. It might even do more damage than this current composition is doing. But I had Venus already set up, and she's fantastic. And I wanted to see if Bulwark could help with keeping those debuffs up, since we couldn't bring in a Steel Skull. And Frozen Banshee would have put too many debuffs up. So that's the reason why we went with this composition. There's always choices. It always comes down to choices. It's not necessarily one thing's better than the other until you test it and find out. Sometimes you just make choices and decisions and see how it works out. So anyway, I wanted to show that. We'll go ahead and leave. I'll get myself off and let you guys watch this, and we'll come back at the end. 2.68 million. That is nothing to scoff at. I think that's a really good result right there. And, one of the best parts about this is we are able to do 2 key damage on Nightmare and still start progressing towards Ultra Nightmare. I'm really happy with this. I know this is us fam is as well. There's a lot of advantages to this kind of composition that aren't maybe readily apparent. You might be just looking at the damage and saying to yourself, well, you're clearly not doing, or you're just doing the same kind of damage you were doing before. Couldn't the other comp have done this kind of damage on Ultra Nightmare? There's a couple things to that I want to point out and I think is important. So there's a couple things that happen when you're speed tuning your team and you're trying to make that transition from whatever level you're at to the next level. And especially when you're moving from Nightmare to Ultra Nightmare, it's a big jump. The speeds there's a big difference there. The accuracy you need, which is maybe the most important thing, there's a big difference there as well. And the defense you need, there's a big difference with that as well. When we did a slow tune, one of the negative things about a slow tune is it doesn't usually translate well to different difficulties. So we had Skull Crusher at like 150. We had another champion like 150. It's not easy to make that transition, those leaps, those jumps. Because a Skull Crusher at 150 on Nightmare with the speed boost is one thing, but once you take it to Ultra Nightmare, it's a completely different kind of animal. It's very hard to get those things tuned for both of them. And you saw the limit of the gear that we had. So the thing with this, I find very impressive about this speed tune, is not the fact that we're doing the damage that we were doing that before. It's the fact that we're doing that damage, but now all of our champions are in a speed that can work on Ultra Nightmare. The only exception is Sepulcher Sentinel, The only exception is Sepulcher Sentinel, who needs to move at a 4-3, so her speed is like 240. It's really big, right? That's going to be a whole different kind of trial and error thing to get to. But because of Vergis, all the champions that need to be at a 1-1 ratio, we can keep at a 1-1 ratio right now. They're all over 170. Skullcrusher even's over 190. That's a big change, because now what that means is as we get better gear, it becomes a lot easier for us to switch pieces out and upgrade the gear so that we're at the same speed or similar, and we're doing more damage and we're staying alive longer because our defense is going up, our crit rate's going up, and our HP is going up. That's a really big thing, because you're constantly getting new pieces and you want to integrate that in your team. That's how you show progressive improvement. So what this composition has done, maybe it hasn't improved the damage of us right now, but what it has done is it's set us up to continue to grow from here. We started out at this spot where we had absolutely no gear, no speed. We were super slow. We were stuck on Nightmare, and we were stuck in Nightmare. We improved Nightmare, but that's where we were stuck. And then we were able to, in this one, improve it so that maybe we're not all the way down here, 1 or 2 or 3 keying Ultra Nightmare, but we're somewhere in this range where we're actually moving towards that, and we can slowly improve towards that. We can build additional champions because we now know the speeds that we need. We can build up additional champions with gear so that we can change out and sub them in if we need to. We don't necessarily have to have Venus if we can find somebody and put them at that same speed. So those are kind of the things that I was thinking about going into this. Now, like I said, we could have brought in Rosin and Frozen Banshee. Probably, maybe, I don't know. We could have done more damage. But we would have still been kind of stuck in the same spot of how much gear do I put on? What's the best way to go about doing this? How much crit rate can I really fit in on a Rosin? How do I keep Frozen Banshee alive? It becomes very difficult, and their base speeds are so much lower than Bulwark and Venus that I don't think it would have been possible. So I was happy with what we have. And I think it gives us a really good blueprint to improve from this point forward. And I think that's really important too. When we do these takeovers, it's not just about tuning the team to get the most damage possible right now, but it's also setting the foundation for this account to continue to move forward and grow from this point on. And I think we've done that. So I think this was a really big success. I'm really proud of it. Honestly, I thought it was very creative to use Vergis, and this tune is awesome. Like, it's really cool. I might make this tune for my own team just so I can use it as like a backup team, because it's cool. It's cool. It's fun. And I was really impressed that we were able to last as long as we did and do as much damage as we did, considering the limitations in the squad. So that's it. Hopefully this was enjoyable for you guys. I really appreciate you sticking around for it. I am going to put out a Vergis spotlight video, a champion guide video on him in the next day or two, because of this very account. It's time to do that. I like Vergis a lot. He's underrated, and I feel like more people should be using him. He's just really hard to tune, and if you don't use him in Clan Boss, he's not that great. He's one of those, what would you call it, like a mediocre champ. He's a good transition champ. He's not endgame by any means, but he's not bad at all. I feel like there is a place for him in this game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, learned something new. It's a little bit longer than usual because we were doing both Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare, but thank you guys for staying along for the ride. Till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.